Welcome to Season 2 of Thriving While Black. This season, we're taking you on a journey through the heart of Black communities in Los Angeles and San Bernardino counties. Not just the places on the map, but the ones who hold our history, the ones that raised us. In every neighborhood, there's always a staple, a place where people gather, where stories are told, where culture lives on. A neighborhood church, a family restaurant, a local park, or a home that's seen generations come through its doors. These aren't just buildings, they're places of refuge, spaces of joy, symbols of permanence in a world that too often tries to erase us. But despite gentrification, underfunding, and even climate change, these institutions remain rooted, resilient, and deeply Black. In Season 2, we'll celebrate these community staples, we'll meet the people who've kept them alive, we'll hear the stories that have been passed down, and the dreams still unfolding. Because these places, they are more than landmarks, they're lifelines. Places and symbols of Black permanence. I'm Kaci Patterson.
I'm Felicia Jones.
And this is Thriving While Black, the podcast.
Our first episode will feature the Godmother of Black Philanthropy in Los Angeles, Fran Jemmott Rollins. Join us as we visit Fran's home and journey through historical moments that make this an iconic legacy of Black Los Angeles.
Welcome, Fran Jemmott.
I'm thrilled to be here.
We're so thrilled to have you here. This is such a treat. This is such a gift. So thank you for the gift of your presence and the gift of your time. Felicia and I have talked about what a gift this podcast is to the movement because it is a representation of modern day oral history. And you are such an icon in Black LA, and to be able to just capture this next hour of oral history with you is such a gift to all of us. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it really is my pleasure. That's a little awesome to think that weight, to carry that idea of being part of this history is something I don't think about all the time. But thank you for helping me to frame it.
It's so interesting because your name is the one that is probably first on most people's list when people get into philanthropy and they say, who should I talk to? Who should I know? Fran Jemmott, Fran Jemmott, Fran Jemmott. So you have meant so much to so many people, and your wisdom carries through, I think, every philanthropic institution, certainly that I've touched. So thank you. Thank you for who you are and who you've been to this work.
Well, I accept that. I'm humbled by it.
Well, let's get into it.
So I know you are a legend in LA, but you didn't start here. So where are you originally from? And how did LA become your home?
That's 3 podcasts.
Oh, okay.
At least.
Yeah.
But my origin story is I was born in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, New York. My father was an immigrant from Barbados. My mother migrated to New York from North Carolina. So I feel very much like I grew up in a bicultural, very different values coming from Southern Black Baptist to my father, who was very worldly. He was 50 when I was born, so he really was a worldly person. And here I came into this remarkable community that is today a thriving, historically Black community.
So tell us how you got started in philanthropy. What is your philanthropic origin story?
I was born into a family of civic engagement. In our family, the motto was, if you aren't giving to your community, you are stealing from it. Somebody is doing the work for you. And so because my father was much older than most fathers, he was really doing the fundraising for events. And I sort of leaned into that part of philanthropy. And they were having an event, the Committee on Racial Unity in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and a banquet or something. And he told me to go down to a neighbor who happened to be a judge, Judge Wilson's house, and take him 2 tickets to the banquet and tell him he could pay for the tickets at the event. 1952. Judge Wilson says, come in, Frances. I'll write the check for you now.
Wow.
So 10 years old, maybe, somewhere around there. I go skipping down the street, waving whatever a check was, whatever it was for. It just felt like, wow, this is pretty cool. Anybody else you want me to go knock on their door and get a check? So I had this kind of joyful introduction to philanthropy. Yeah. And then I was just always raising money for something. Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your own experiences in the civil rights movement and how that helped shape, either consciously or subconsciously, how you think it helped shape who you've become in Black LA today.
It's interesting. I am a child of the civil rights movement. I was at Howard University in 1961. You could not be in Washington, D.C. in the early 1960s and not demonstrate at least one time in front of the White House with, black power to the African people, and the idea of going to Mississippi with my friend Ralph Featherstone, who was with SNCC and on freedom rides. My parents were like, no, not with our money. And my father challenged me with, well, you can't vote in New York, so what are you going to tell somebody in Mississippi? So I went back to New York, and that's when I started organizing migrant workers and helping people in New York understand, my family, that the civil rights movement isn't just about the South.
Yeah. And
it was through that I got connected to the New Careers Training Laboratory, this CORE, the Scholarship Education Defense Fund for Racial Equality, did the organizing. But I also had contact with early in my life with the National Council of Negro Women. One of the women in our community had arranged for a scholarship for me. I ended up working for Dr. Height in the National Council of Negro Women. I was going to say,
you got to drop Dorothy Height in the conversation.
1974, just July, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the memorial to Mary McLeod Bethune. You may remember that Dr. Height was the only woman of the Big Six on the platform in 1963, but she wasn't allowed to speak. So here we are. We're at the intersection of civil rights, women's rights, the tensions. And so I just was amazed at how she navigated, between Gloria Steinem and Roy Wilkins, that the YWCA, Hadassah, she had them all. We literally didn't have the money to put that monument in the park maybe 2 weeks before it was erected. And Dr. Height kind of went in her bag and pulled out a little black book and started looking. She never let anybody look at the book, but it's clearly some names, she had. And she called this gentleman on the phone. It was very late at night. We were in our office sweating, like, what are we going to do, And she said to the person on the phone, well, we've done everything we could. We've had, and we just can't raise the money, and the foundry won't cast the statue, And so the person on the phone said, okay, well, I'll send I think it was like $40,000 then, really reasonable for a statue in a park. And she was, well, thank you, Henry, and, hung up. And we were all sitting there like, well, who's Henry?
Right.
Ford.
I say, who was Henry?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
Henry Ford.
Henry Ford.
Wow.
Henry Ford. And so I sort of was an eyewitness to this, being at the Capitol with Dr. Haidt and Shirley Chisholm, being at the White House with, Mrs. Nixon wanting to have tea with Dr. Haidt, being and sort of navigating these vastly different worlds because, I had an afro that was way out to here, my Shiro Angela, I was, and I just really had the hardest time reconciling how one does this. Because to me, civil rights was about civil wrongs.
That needed to be righted.
And it was about revolution and acting up and acting out. And, Dr. Haidt would just, we have to go and have tea with Mrs. Nixon, who, after all, is the First Lady of all of the people of the United States, of whom you are one. And when she spoke like that, I was like, oh. She would put it in perspective. That, this is your White House, too.
What did that do to you psychologically? Like, how did that start to shape and transform your thinking or even your approach when you were sort of putting civil rights in a particular box, so to speak?
So there was the black nationalists, the civil rights, and then the more moderate and conciliatory parts of the movement. So it's like code switching.
Yeah.
It's absolutely like code switching. I had to think of myself differently. And, it's hard to think of yourself differently and then not have to behave differently. I
completely understand that, Fran.
Yes.
I completely understand that.
Oh, yeah. If you're a firebrand and then you have to, develop a certain kind of poise. We see our elected officials doing it every single day of the week, and it's what's necessary to build relationships, to learn how to advance ideas, to make concessions, and to inch toward progress, and always deal with the setbacks, and always dealing with starting over and restarting. So it's both was a maturation process for me as I was growing older, and you arrive at a point where I realized that you have to play in all of the sandboxes, and when you box yourself in one, then you limit your opportunities to have influence.
So when did you actually come to LA?
So I drifted.
Oh, okay.
I drifted. I was in 1987. The Surgeon General, C. Everett Koop, wanted to have a Surgeon General's workshop, which is how a lot of public health policy is shaped. The Surgeons General would convene people around seatbelts, tobacco, whatever, and then they would gather the experts. Well, this Surgeon General, who was very risque because of his history with AIDS and condoms, decided that he wanted to have a Surgeon General's workshop on self-help mutual support groups.
Oh, interesting.
And public health. And he turned to the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Hospital Association, and somebody in the self-help movement got word of it, and then we heard about it, and we were just, oh, Dr. Koop, you can't do that. You wouldn't have a man at the head of the women's movement. You wouldn't have a general at the head of the peace movement. Why would you try to put professionals at the head of a self-help movement, which is all about informal care? And to his credit, he heard that. And so he convened 160 people, half of whom were public health professionals and half of whom were from 12-step groups, from the Sisterhood of Black Single Mothers, the Black Women's Health Project, at UCLA for a 3-day conference to shape public policy. I think there were maybe 16 recommendations that came out of the 3 days, and most of it ended up in, I think, maternal and child health, in health and human services. So, for example, courts will tell people who have DUI arrests to go to AA. AA has no interest in being a part of the court system. They don't care whether you come or not. It's so that sort of not legitimate link. We try to legitimize some of it, and now it's so common to go to for care, and someone say you should go to a support group. I mean, back in the mid-1980s, it was ridiculed. Yeah. Yes.
What was your role in that, Fran?
I was one of several self-help group organizers. I worked at the City University of New York, and we had a self-help clearinghouse where we collected data, and we organized people who wanted to start self-help groups. So Alzheimer's was one that no one had heard of, and a man came stumbling into our office, and his wife had a diagnosis, and he didn't know where to go for help for him. His wife was going to get care, but he didn't have a place to go for him. And so we organized in New York a Alzheimer's support group, and now look at it. There was a self-help center at UCLA, and there was one in Chicago at Northwestern University.
Yeah.
So when the Surgeon General decided he did not want it inside the Beltway because it had a kookiness about it, he said, well, let's not do it, inside the sphere. And I had a special reason for wanting to be in L.A., and people thought I would argue to have it in New York. And I said, no, let's go to L.A.
What was your special reason?
I had a friend who, I was a single mom raising 2 children in New York, and one of my dearest friends was a gay man who had been diagnosed with HIV. And he moved from New York to L.A. because the care in L.A. was much better. And it was unthinkable that I couldn't give him the kind of support that he had always given me. So, I was praying for a way to get to L.A. and to be more supportive of him.
Oh, what a wonderful story. Yeah. What a wonderful story.
It worked out well.
Yeah,
it really worked out well.
It really did well. It worked out for all of us.
Yes.
It worked out because Dr. Coop was instrumental in getting round-the-clock care when Ed needed it. Without that kind of intervention with the head of Blue Cross, it would never have happened.
Wow.
This story, I think, is such an example of who you are in the world of Black philanthropy. There are no, it's true. They're true.
Absolutely.
There are so many examples of where the community elevated something and you stepped in to say, well, let's organize what the community needs. Let's actually provide the kind of care and support and let it be developed by the community, let it be driven by the community, let it be run by the community. And that is really how you've operated in the world of philanthropy. We affectionately call you the Godmother of Black Philanthropy.
I love that.
Here in Los Angeles.
I wear it with honor. Yes.
And we give it to you with great honor and esteem.
That's right.
How did you mount to the top of that mountain here in LA? How did you get started in philanthropy here in LA?
When I was at the Self-Help Center, it was funded by the California Department of Mental Health. I was on the board of the National Black Women's Health Project, famously led by, talk about an icon in public health, Billy Avery. And the national organization had created just waves of change in the women's movement and in the women's health movement and the reproductive health movement. But when I got to California, I started in New York on the board. When I got to California, I remember saying, Billy, there's really not a lot of engagement around Black women's health here in Los Angeles. There was more in the Bay Area. And her words to me were something to the effect, well, I guess we'll have to do something about that, won't we? Or, the challenge. So I was fortunate enough to he bumped into me, Tom David, who was then at the Germ Servine Foundation at a county conference in which I was speaking about self-help. And he said, I hear you know something about the National Black Women's Health Project. I said, of course I do. And it was strange, here's this big, white Irish guy talking about the Black Women's Health Project. But he said, I'd like to fund them. And I thought, that's interesting. And so that was the beginning. 30 years ago, the California Black Women's Health Project was started. And think about who, I was the first board chair in ED, but then LaTanya Slack and Holly Mitchell, Crystal Crawford, and now,
icons. I mean, these are legends.
Exactly. And so we built out from there, but we have to give tribute to Lark Galloway Gilliam, because in 1992, when the health foundations were basically established, it was Lark and community health councils that really rallied people around the fact that this was the people's money and not the universities and the hospitals, and so the idea of the health foundation serving community. Well, there were lawsuits and all kinds of political activity around the formation. I mean, the health foundations changed the landscape of philanthropy in California.
100%. So both the California Wellness Foundation and the California Endowment were born out of those health conversions.
There are 250, I think, health foundations in California.
Wow, that many?
Wow.
Think about it. Kaiser Permanente, LA Care, everybody.
Yeah.
Community benefits, yes, it's a huge sector.
And you've been part of so many movement of leadership in those institutions. There is really nobody that I can think of in LA, with everybody from a foundation president to an entry-level program officer. The person who can call the meeting and get both of those people to attend is Fran Jemmott.
Indeed.
That's an interesting thing. I'm going to try that next week. I'll see how that goes.
I bet you they'll show up.
I was never on the staff at the endowment. I worked for 7 years at the California Wellness Foundation. And I was on the board at Liberty Hill for 10 or 12 years. So that was my actual experience. And it wasn't always, easy, as you know. I mean, we were really, change is overcoming resistance, overcoming the status quo. The idea, the first night I worked at the Wellness Foundation, I stayed late, and we had submitted a proposal from the Black Women's Health Project that was denied. So I was shocked when they asked me to come to, I didn't apply for a job, I was invited to come to work there. So I went in the files to find the Black Women's
What happened?
What happened? And, there in red, scrawled all over it, I said, well, what is the need for an organization to address Black women's health? Why would we invest in this? There were all these questions raised by the program review team, and it just doesn't seem like, there was a fit. So then I knew what I had to do. I mean, I said, well, that's probably true of every Black organization that is applying for funding.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question, because at the time when you were involved in more institutionalized philanthropy, more formal philanthropy, you were probably one of maybe a handful of Black folks who were doing grant making. And now you've been so instrumental in launching the careers, helping to launch the careers of so many of our current leaders, Black leaders in philanthropy. So I'm curious, like, what was and I think you're alluding to it a little bit, like you understood that there were barriers that Black-led organizations were experiencing at an institutional level that was really keeping them from money and accessing the resources of the foundation. But I'm curious, like, what was the moment or the series of moments that really made you step into a space to say, my role is to help organize philanthropy for the benefit of Black Los Angeles?
Oh, why don't you ask a hard question? Let's see. Well, on reflection, it's difficult to find the moment. When I was asked to join the staff at California Wellness, I was very resistant. I really loved my work at UCLA. I loved the casual, informal nature of working in jeans and sneakers and being on a campus, and this idea of philanthropy, as I remembered from the first time I ever visited a foundation in the 70s, was the Taconic Foundation in New York, and it was all dark wood paneling and 3-inch thick carpeting, and we never got past the reception desk. Which is not you all. We were organizing migrant workers in the potato fields in Long Island, and they weren't even aware that there were migrant workers in fields in Long Island. So the connection was never made. So I was very discouraged about a lot of philanthropy. And so I didn't think that I fit. But Karen Bass was the executive director of the Community Coalition, a dear friend. And we talked about it, and Karen said, Fran, you have to do it because we don't get called to do this kind of stuff. And so we talked about, well, what would that platform mean? And then I got the sense that it was larger than myself. It was an opportunity to bring other people into philanthropy, to have other ideas like community organizing, as a part of philanthropic giving. And I could see myself in that role and doing that work around the state. And it became very important to me.
Yeah.
It was an organizing role. It was a role of disruption, These are things that I feel like define Black philanthropy in Los Angeles then and now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people that I was fortunate enough to work with and have some role in hiring are now presidents of foundations.
Absolutely.
And so,
that's amazing.
That I think upon reflection is awesome.
So I met you by way of the late Reverend Eugene Williams, and you were so instrumental in supporting organizing and movement building. And you are a giant to us in organizing. So is there a point in which you understood that your work sort of and your influence moved beyond the public health sector, but then had influence in all these other places, specifically in organizing and movement building? When did you come to realize your own influence in that space?
Well, I'm trying to think, and I honestly can't say there was a moment. When you're an organizer, you tend to frame the world through that lens. And so everything is organizing. A family event is an organizing event. It isn't as though you sit down one day and say, well, today I have to do some organizing. It's every day. And that was true of the role of churches, the small, Reverend Williams, the small to medium-sized churches. And also connected to it was this sense that building power in the community and having the community take responsibility for its health, a real public health model, which is being debated still today, if it's a legitimate role of community organizations and foundations, yes, to engage communities around health and the social determinants of health. That was crucial, but that was almost like speaking a foreign language in the late 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine it was tough to make a case for supporting organizing when at least health funding was for direct service and programs. So I know that you were a courageous voice.
Well, I stand on many shoulders, and the Wellness Foundation was the pioneer of, the organizing around gun violence and preventing gun violence, and making gun violence, the number one killer of children in California, an issue. Well, you don't go to the American Psychiatric Association, or right. It's with all due respect to them, that takes some level of activity at the street level that was not familiar. And then, of course, we had the uprising in 1992, and that was a big wake-up call for all foundations in Los Angeles. Like, well, how could that happen? We're so involved in the community. Everybody's concerned about them. Why would they be? Why is there so much anger there? And there was a group of funders called LA Urban Funders that formed to try to functionally address what were fundamental community concerns, and particularly the racial tensions that arose out of that. So it really signaled the need for philanthropy to shift from a strictly kind of care service support model, which the legislation that created the foundation conversions, crafted. It said these foundations have to give money to health. So, there was a lot of dancing around that. Still is.
Yeah, thank you for leading the way on that.
Fran, if I can ask you a little bit about the role of your home. And I know that we will visit your home and get a grassroots view, of what it's like to be in the home of Fran Jemmott. Your home is as iconic as you are in Black LA. How did that come to be?
Well, the origin story and the transition from New York to Los Angeles, some people know that I answered an ad in the LA Weekly and I met a husband.
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that.
I don't think I knew that.
So 50-year-old women, just take heart. Okay? Take heart. So it really is the home that Bernie Rollins built because he purchased this home for $40,000 in 1969. Wow. I was living in a vastly more expensive apartment closer to campus in Santa Monica. And he and I started dating in January of 1992. Wow. And we were organizing the first national conference on Black women's health west of the Mississippi. And he said, dating lingo, well, I'm an artist and an illustrator. I said, well, fine, do me a flyer. Put
it to use, huh?
Yeah, let's get it on. And then he did this remarkable flyer, and all of the people, the women who saw it said, well, which sister did this? Because he captured the essence of Black women.
Of Black women,
importantly in this flyer. And so on my visits to his house, I was always kind of chiding him about his artwork and the idea that it deserved more exposure. He just didn't do art. He did illustrations and he did stuff for commercial purposes. But his art was really not. It was his therapy. It was what he did for him. And so I was always encouraging him, let me get my hands on this art.
That's right.
And we'll do something with it. Well, over time, so many people came and saw the house. And really it was the block club, I think, that started meeting at our house. And then the kids were taking piano lessons. So the piano teacher would come to the block club meetings, and the whole neighborhood would be lit up with people singing songs and Christmas songs. And it was just such a unifying feeling, And then somebody else said, well, we had a death in somebody on our staff. Your house is a safe place. Could we meet there? And then somebody said, well, Black women who've had abortions are afraid to speak out, and we want to have a safe place for people to have a meeting. Wow. I mean, it just evolved. It just really evolved over this openness that both Bernie and I shared, because in our story, we are both of Caribbean descent. We both have a parent who immigrated from Barbados, and so culturally, it made sense for us. And it was the way he grew up and that I grew up in Brooklyn that made us realize that we were on to something valuable for our community.
So 2 people with family origins in the islands. 2 people with lived experience in New York found each other in LA and formed this beautiful relationship, this not just with each other, but with the community and the broader philanthropic community. And just what a way to think about 2 lives becoming so intertwined in purpose and in possibility, for the community. It's really, really beautiful. And now permanence, because your home is such a permanent staple of what it means to do political work in LA when it comes to thinking about the health and wellness of the Black community.
Well, our friend Supervisor Holly Mitchell, we were close friends. Several of my friends were single women. And Holly's been known to stand up and say, we were so happy when Fran got married because we all got a husband. So Bernie, who he had no sisters, he grew up with all boys, was putting up the artwork in somebody's house and doing something else. And so he began to engage around the political campaigns and the women running for office and doing the artwork and making it so real. It was truly an adventure. It was something I think that was very latent in him, and he just really took to it. Congresswoman Sidney Comlager Dove, they just have a special relationship. And so, of course we're going to have something here for her. And of course for Karen Bass. Karen said she was going to run for the assembly. And I don't think that everybody in LA was on that bandwagon, and Bernie kind of thought, well, if she wants to run, she just ought to run, and we ought to support her. And so we ended up having her first fundraiser in our backyard, and so since then, just about everybody. We are so fortunate in our community that I could, on my device, reach out to the congresswoman, the assemblywoman, the supervisor, the state senator, the mayor. I very rarely, do it for any pressing need other than for us to get together and have a good time. Yeah. But there have been some absolutely magical moments at the house when I truly wish that we had recorded some of the conversations.
Well, Fran, we talked about how you helped to launch my career and experience into philanthropy, and that happened in this backyard.
That's right.
In 2014, when I was attending a Liberty Hill Uplifting Change event, the second event was a salon that was hosted here in your backyard. And that was the first time I ever heard, and it was you talking, about all of the different vehicles and ways that we as Black folks could engage in philanthropy. And it was the first time that I ever heard the words donor advised fund or giving circle. And when you started to talk about what that meant, I remember turning to Felicia at our table and saying to her, we should do that. We could do that.
That's where it started.
And that is where the Black Fund launched. That moment. And then when we officially launched, you hosted us, our launch event in this backyard. Yes. And so that was really my entree into seeing what was possible for Black philanthropy that looked like me, that was younger, that was, browner than most people that I saw in philanthropic circles, that had a different way of thinking about how do we organize donors and how do we organize money to move to movement. And that fund then became what is now eventually, over many iterations, to your point earlier about changing and evolution and wanting to make space for those kinds of ideas. That fund became eventually what is now the Black Equity Collective, which is what we both put our heart and soul into.
True. It was just a matter of showing up and meeting people and talking and listening and
And how much that has evolved and grown. Yeah.
I mean, $55 million has been directed and leveraged for Black nonprofit organizations in Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, all from this.
That seed that was planted in this backyard. So that's my favorite story of being
Keep telling
here.
it. We need to hear it. We need to know that story.
Yeah, that's my favorite story of being in your backyard, and it's something that I think, wow, this happened here. I wonder what some of those moments are for you, where you think about, wow, that happened here. Was it the launch of Mayor Bass's political career? What was it? What was
It
when
was
you think
all
about
of it. It was really
wow
all of it. It was knowing that despite the dips and turns in my own personal life, that I always woke up in the morning with something good to contribute to. That things could be off the rails in so many ways, but I always had a purpose. And that people did. When I said, can you come over? Can we talk about that? People showed up. People showed up. And here we are, the Black Women's Health Project, the various political campaigns, the Black Equity Collective. I mean, that's got to become part of my story because I don't usually tell it that way. And the idea that we're so powerful together. That's just what I feel, that there's real power in sharing this story. This is such a remarkable contribution that you're making.
Thank you. Thank you. And for me, what it symbolizes is the power of place and what a place can birth. And often we think about place as these institutions, our Black churches, our HBCUs, but institutions can be homes.
Exactly.
That's right.
And your home is an institution in the Black community.
It is.
Your home becomes such an important vehicle for us in our communities because we get to have these kind of conversations with each other. We get to wrestle through some of the tensions in our spaces outside of the eye and outside of the visibility of people who are going to judge us, you know, but we actually get to wrestle with all of the complications of our Blackness and what that means as organizers, community organizers, donor organizers, institutional organizers, folks who are trying to tear institutions down, folks who are trying to repair what's broken. All of it sort of has unfolded in some form or another in the conversations that have happened and the communities that have come and have been built and anchored through your home.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, especially from both of you, because I think you've been so important in putting our messages, and it's both the message and the effectiveness that you've shown us of how to be messengers. I mean, the idea of having a podcast. Come on, okay. So I admire you. I don't think, and for sure, I wasn't thinking in 1974 that I'd be sitting here talking on a microphone telling people about how wonderful it was to have to go to tea at the White House. I was just, that was
especially the Nixon White House. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the fact that somebody is benefiting from that is just, it was worth the torture.
Yeah.
I feel like what you shared now is the tension that we feel in organizing, where people are very beholden to their values and they don't see the need to play in multiple sandboxes. So this is very timely, and it's a tension in organizing right now.
And one of the tensions in organizing is having fun, the juxtaposition of the seriousness of the work and the conversation and the strategy and the action and the fun of it all. So we're going to sit in that tension and have some fun.
Let's have some fun. I'll take this one. Did you have a crush, a civil rights crush?
Yeah.
You want to say who it is? Or who it was?
Well, I, at some point, I used to see Representative John Conyers from Michigan at some social events in Washington.
Really?
And, there was a little, flame there. It didn't matter. It didn't go anywhere. It was just something that happened. But one of my really dear friends, who is still a very dear friend, reminds me of that, every now and then. Yeah.
Give us the tea. What?
I know.
Yeah.
So give us the civil rights tea,
right.
friend.
Like, I not only have a crush, I had a thing.
Just, I'm sure he doesn't know, but he's died, so we can say these things safely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Talk about a safe place.
Yeah. Safe now.
Okay, what's your go-to Creole dish?
Creole? Well, is shrimp and grits Creole?
I think so. I believe so. I would call it.
I don't know if it is, to be honest with you.
I would call it Creole.
Well, now, let's be clear. If you in New Orleans and then the other one would be she crab soup.
Oh, yes.
She crab soup.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of seafood and yes, definitely.
Do you make either?
Do you make it?
Well, shrimp and grits I do,
but
I haven't tried she crab soup. But I love cooking. In fact, when Bernie and I met through the personal ads, when I had to tell him I said, I love Caribbean cooking. And of course, that stole his heart.
Of course.
That's wonderful.
It's always the pathway, right?
That's right.
All right. Do you have a favorite Black-owned restaurant, or I think it's a restaurant in Windsor Hills?
Well,
or spot, Black-owned spot.
If I walk out of my house and down and turn left, the first one I'm going to come to is Somerville. The new restaurant that our good friend Kareem Webb and Issa Rae, there. And if I cross the street, say you coming for lunch and I don't have anything in the house, I'll run over to Krusty's and get turkey chili, and they do gumbo pie on Fridays.
Gumbo pie.
So family is such a big part of who you are. What is your favorite family pastime?
Well, our family started celebrating Kwanzaa.
Yes.
And Bernard should I say, 55, when he came home from college. And he said, in his own, revolutionary way, well, we're just going to celebrate Kwanzaa this year. And I didn't know what it was. And so we started with 3 or 4 people, and now we have about 150 people who come to Kwanzaa every year.
It is an annual tradition.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Wonderful. I love that. Are there some words that you live by, or favorite quotes or sayings that you embrace and live by?
Oh, gosh. I grew up in one of those households where everybody had their little thing. And the thing that I remember, I remember my father saying to me that is so true now, there's something he would kind of whisper, well, if you can work for somebody else, you can work for yourself.
Yes, say that.
That one, the entrepreneurial Caribbean, that one, and yes, that resonates, and I repeat it often.
Yeah, well, you've lived that. Dad would be proud.
Yeah.
What is a favorite work of art of Bernie's?
Oh, my. There's so many. Well, before we were married, we were dating. I understood that Bernie does not do gifts. You can, it just wasn't going to happen. But on, I think, the first birthday, or maybe the second, he wrote in calligraphy on this beautiful paper a poem.
Wow.
Yeah, sweet brightness, let gentle darkness surround you. And okay, I'll melt if I keep it up. So I frame that. That's probably one of my best. And then, the other is his mother told him the story of her immigration. And she was a young woman, 1922, and the ship couldn't come into the harbor in Bridgetown in Barbados. So the people had to get in a rowboat and go out to the ship. And so Bernie's an impressionist, and he has this painting, which you'll see, of this huge ship and this tiny lady in a yellow dress climbing up the bow of the ship. And his mother's name is Jessie, and the title of the painting is Jessie Goes to America.
Okay, last question.
What's something that would surprise people to know about you? That, of course, that you can say publicly. And I think you've said a few things right now that would surprise us, but is there something else?
Well, people who know me well, my family, sometimes you'll see me on a device at a meeting and you think I'm taking notes. But I play about 15 to 20 games of Scrabble every day against the computer.
Okay, well, we won't count on you for notes.
But for vocabulary, we will.
Yes, of course.
I have attention deficit disorder. And so my way of managing it is to not act out, but to act in.
Yeah.
But my doctor loves it because he says, well, that's a really good way to keep your memory and your brain active.
Yeah.
So nobody should have told me that because, truly, my family is, I might own 20 Scrabble games, every version, every variety. I started playing with my mother. Scrabble came out in 1948. And so I've just been hooked on Scrabble all my life.
Oh, that's wonderful.
My mother and I used to play every Friday night.
Oh, did she let you win?
I'm sure she did.
Oh, my mother would never let me win. She and her girlfriends were hostile.
Oh, wow.
And so I learned to be very competitive.
Oh, okay.
Very competitive. Like, Mom, I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get on the board and see.
Okay.
Yes.
See where we go.
Okay. I'll be gentle.
Well, Fran, it has been really a gift, really our honor, our pleasure, and just so much fun getting to know you even more because I told you before the show started, I know you helped launch my career in philanthropy, and I know Felicia has had her own origin story with you too. So we consider ourselves to be your godchildren, your goddaughters in philanthropy.
You honor me.
Yeah.
Please, I'll be hard to live with from now on.
We're moving in, by the
Thank
way.
you. Okay, come on. That would be the best.
Yes.
That would be the best.
Well, let's join you at your home. Let's go.
I would love for you to come and see some of the art and the historical photographs and things that, have been part of this discussion. So please, yes.
Hi, Fran.
Hey, Felicia. Hi, Kaci.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I really want you to come and see some of my favorite treasured possessions. These first two photos are from Bedford-Stuyvesant.
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, where I was born. And so my father was very active. And so this is, for example, is the Racial Unity Organization from May 1950. So I was born in 43. And this is my mom.
Wow.
And there's my dad way back there.
Way in the back, in the white.
Yes, yes. And in this room, we like to keep pictures of the family together, a place where they know they're treasured. Here's the 3 generations of Rollins men. We attempted to arrange photographs to give a pictorial history of our families.
Okay.
These are more of those old civic engagement, early community life, the credit union, the house that my dad built. And so we have pictures of our ancestors, Mrs. Rollins, Mrs. Jemmott, and my beloved Aunt Edna, who was very instrumental in raising me. So I like for our grandchildren to rest in the arms of their ancestors and to, vicariously just take it in, osmose it, if you will, because you can't tell them all of this. They have their own imagination about what all this means. So this is a hand-woven history of a village in Zimbabwe. And it starts with the volcanoes erupting, and the weavers were telling the story of how their village came to be. And it's a pictorial understanding of how we came from the land and we're connected to the land, and it's our own version of permanence. The painting of the Vietnamese woman squatting outside what might be the Social Security office in Saigon, Bernie painted that acrylic on canvas in 1968 when he was in Saigon as an engineer for a defense contractor. And those words in Vietnamese mean go and vote. And he was so struck by the juxtaposition of poverty and democracy with the United States government waging war on these people that you can see in the fractured sense of that environment.
What a way to kick off season 2. Thank you so much, Fran.
Thank you. Thank you both. I love you dearly.
I love you too. We love you too.
Want more Thriving While Black? Subscribe to listen to our monthly drops anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. While you wait for the next episode, catch up with season 1, available now.